This content is being brought to you by the Bourbon Real Talk American Whiskey Aroma Kit. This is a tool that I put together to help all you whiskey aficionados out there develop your palates. You can sit down with the vials and train your senses, or you can sit down with a great dram and break that whiskey down to its components. If you have any interest of purchasing a kit of your own, head on over to bourbonrealtalk.com/shop and pick one up. Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody out there in Bourbon Real Talk land. Randy Sullivan for an interview that I'm a little bit nervous about because we have an actual living legend in the house, Nancy Fraley. Nancy the Nose Fraley. Very excited about this. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Maybe I should leave my nose here to speak, and I'll go elsewhere.
Do you feel like that? Yeah,
sometimes.
Because I've heard like,
never mind me.
I've heard comments like it's not the best nickname, and I'm like, well, it is if you knows whiskey, I guess. I don't know, or not just spirits, not just whiskey.
Right.
So we are at Iron Root Republic, so you can see that there. We are drinking out of their glasses. Nancy, if you don't know who she is, then you should pull your head out of your butt because she consults with many of the craft spirits producers that are making some of the most, exciting, different spirits that are out there. And probably one of the ones that you're most well known for is you did the Joseph Magnus cigar blend. Is that correct?
Yes, I've done all of the Magnus whiskeys.
Okay. So I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that you were. Yeah. So I for some reason, I thought at some point I read that there were some that you're more involved with than others or whatever. Maybe that's not the case, but you
designed the entire line.
Nice. Okay. And so we're going to get into all of that and how you have one of the oddest backgrounds of anybody I've ever heard of in the spirits industry. But we always start off with whiskey. So we actually have, tell the people what this is.
So this here.
Up high. There you go.
Yeah. You can see that. This is a barrel sample for it's going to be the upcoming Joseph Magnus Family Reserve. Probably be released sometime next spring that I'm working on. Components are roughly 13 to 21 years old in it, and I'm using some French slow reduction techniques in it, and I'm just really taking my time with this one. So I thought I might give you a snapshot of.
Nice. So I actually,
it's a work in progress for sure, but
I had the opportunity to taste a smidgen of this. Just so you know, we passed this bottle around the table, and after everybody had had a chance to taste it, this juice is so precious that Nancy actually said, "Hey, if you don't want to finish yours, can you pour it back into the bottle?" And so we're just gonna try a smidge.
See how small our
yeah, we're doing a little. You can't see, but we are literally surrounded by bottles. I moved them all out of the way. There's probably 20 bottles on the table. And some of them are examples of what not to do with spirits. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're going to get into that. So what are you getting on the nose on this one?
I get a lot of tobacco and old, like saddle leather type of notes.
Do you get any fruit?
I do. It's I get some dark dried fruit.
I'm getting plum.
Plum? I could see that.
But I get plum on a lot of darker dried fruit flavors.
Sure. That's I tend to get prune a lot on
prune.
Those kind
prune.
of notes. I also get a bit of nutty quality to it. So it may be toasted walnut, for example, or almond.
See, she gets into the tasting notes because she's the nose. Oh. So, all right, let's taste it.
All right.
Yeah, that leather's definitely coming through.
Yeah.
So this would be what I would expect like a Pappy 20 to taste like if Pappy 20 tasted good.
Um, Thank you. I'm still not. I'm not that I'm not happy with it, but it's still not quite where I want it yet. It's
Right.
yeah. As I was telling you, it's a work in progress. So I'm looking to as I work on it to give it just a little bit more length on the
Hmm.
palate and a little bit more depth.
It's got a good long finish. But no,
And
and thank you for sharing it, by the way.
yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, definitely good. All
Polish
right.
that one off.
Yeah, so for the rest of the time, we can just grab bottles and drink whatever we want. So Nancy has a really strong background in in Cognac and Armagnac regions. And so there's actually a lot of bottles of super old valuable cognac laying around. So I may try one of those. So
That's actually from Portugal.
this one's Portugal. Okay. All right.
Portuguese. Let me find you.
Yeah, let's do. Okay, we got an Armagnac.
Here we go.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions that I like to ask industry professionals is, did you grow up in a household that kind of promoted or demonstrated responsible drinking, or was it more like of a teetotaler, like we don't really drink around
It
here?
was actually a little bit of both in a sense. So thank you. My father was avid Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola fan.
Okay.
You can imagine in the 1970s, it was the thing. But other family, I'm originally from East Tennessee.
Okay.
So people drank tea, iced tea, sweet tea. So it was a little bit of, I don't know where I grew up. It just seemed all one way or another.
Right.
Either teetotalers or, you actually.
So it's a little bit of both. I'm just shocked at how often industry professionals are like, yeah, there was no drinking allowed in my household. It's like, man, when you discovered drinking, you really went like you made a career out of it. So that's always interesting to me.
Yeah.
So you also have a law degree.
Correct.
From the University of San Francisco.
University of San Francisco School of Law.
And you did you get your no, because you actually went to Harvard first.
Correct.
Right? So you went to Harvard and you got a master's degree in, let me see if I can get it right, Indo-Tibetan Buddhism?
Yes, so I actually went to Harvard Divinity School.
Okay.
But I got a non-theological type of degree, the academic study of religion.
Gotcha.
And Buddhism. So, I studied those old languages like Sanskrit and, literary Tibetan, to 11th century.
Yeah.
Stuff, as one does.
Right. Yeah, of course. What else would you do? Like, didn't you do that?
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, God.
And so when I first heard that, I think I heard it on the Bourbon Pursuit podcast, that you had a master's degree from Harvard, and that it was like in a completely unrelated field, not associated with sensory or anything. And I'm like, absolutely. I just want to ask her, like, what made you go down that path? Because you got an undergraduate degree, right? From
Correct.
University of Tennessee?
Tennessee, Knoxville.
And then you're like, you know what I need to do? I need to go study Sanskrit at Harvard. Like, what was the process there?
Well, I'm kind of naturally, I seem very extroverted in my field, but I'm very kind of nerdy and introverted, and geeky, scholarly, and I just wanted to go on and actually become a professor. And
Mm-hmm.
so I my master's, and the plan was to go on for my PhD. And I remember one day towards the end of my master's program, I just literally felt like I didn't have anything to say anymore in the field.
Mm.
And that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're
And I
studying dead
just,
languages, there's been a lot of time that people could have researched that and already said all the stuff.
well, yeah. Yeah, my focus was also Buddhism in America,
Oh, gotcha.
such to the Tibetan diaspora coming over here to the States and such. And
Do you consider yourself a Buddhist?
not a good one.
Gotcha. I'm not a good Christian. So
there you go.
there you go. I love Jesus, but Christians don't like me much.
Yeah,
because bourbon.
Amen to that. I guess I first got interested maybe, 1978, 1979, and maybe about 1982, 83 was when I started becoming much more interested. And so, that's ended up studying through college and in grad school and such. And then I became very interested in international human rights, and so that's what led me to law school.
Mm. So that was your area of focus of law.
Well, one of them, but also maritime and admiralty law.
There's more money in that.
Another, a more obscure area
Right.
of the law, but a very ancient one, actually. So
for somebody who likes to dive into the ancient details, then hey, that's probably a good area of study. Maritime. I mean, there's been boats a long time, so
absolutely. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yes, one does.
So I also read that you were working on a book, and has that come out yet?
Oh my God.
Because I read this a while back ago.
I've probably been working on that thing for 5 or 6 years. And I'm very close to being finished. And I'm getting a lot of pressure from my publisher to
finish,
to just get the thing done.
They've been known to do that, apply pressure to the.
So I've heard
to the people. Can I say quickly for all the viewers out there, if you go watch, I'm not that funny, but it seems like I am because she's laughing so much. That's just Nancy. Like if you go watch videos, she has the most infectious laugh, and I just fell in love with it. Like watching videos of you, I'm like, this is the greatest, right? So you do have a book coming out. What's the basic concept of the book?
It's pretty much so I teach a course for distillers and people in the alcohol production or spirits production industry called Nosing for Faults. And so it's a book that looks at excuse me at well, I wouldn't say all the possible faults, but many of the possible issues that can come about in spirits production, starting with raw ingredients and water, all of that, going all the way through fermentation, distillation, maturation, warehousing, product transfer, bottling, even post-production issues. Once a product is off of your premises.
So the customer base for this book would either be a ridiculous whiskey nerd, or probably more specifically people that are in spirits production.
Definitely that, yes, and it's probably geared more towards the craft distilling community, where they haven't
they don't have a laboratory that tests the grain when it comes in.
Right.
They don't, all that stuff.
And to have a solid quality control and quality assurance program.
Right.
So
because most of these small guys, they wear all the hats. And
correct.
That's one of the things that I feel like people don't understand about craft is that, why is a cash strength bottle of most craft distillers 60, 70, $80. Well, they don't have economies of scale. They don't
Absolutely.
have, a quality control department that tests the grain when it comes off of the trucks, that tests, everything at every stage and all of those things. And so to me, that's what craft is, right? Craft is something that is a handmade product by somebody who's pouring their heart into it, as opposed to, and nothing wrong with the major Kentucky
No,
distillers.
of course not.
I drink their stuff more than I drink craft. I'm, honestly,
Sure.
but it just feels like there's a little less heart in it.
Yeah, and while there's certainly heart in the craft distilling world, I think this book is geared towards, also, there needs to be some QC programs put
Right,
in
sure.
place.
Yeah, for sure.
Quality is very important.
Yeah, so you guys know I'm not going to say what whiskey it was. It's on the table. I can see it right now.
Oh, me too.
And we tasted it, and I said, this whiskey tastes the way that it would smell if you went into a damp forest and just like pulled back the top layer of leaves, right? And
right.
And because your job is to help these smaller craft distillers to identify bottlenecks in their quality. She was able to go, oh well, what was it you said? There's something with the grain, like there was like
it's a corn mycotoxin. So when they either receive the grain, there been an issue with it, and it was moldy, or depending on how they stored it, once it was received, it could have been in a very damp area. Something happened along that.
Right.
And so yeah.
So you do own a company called Nosing Services. Don't Google it, because you're not going to find anything.
Yes,
Nancy's in such high demand that not only is her mailbox always full on her phone, and she frequently does not respond to emails. But in addition to that, she doesn't even need to advertise. Okay. She's so busy that she can't check her own voicemail, and she doesn't have a website, which is amazing.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm astounded that I don't, I actually don't have to do advertising. It's shocking to me sometimes.
Gotcha.
People come out of the woodwork.
So Nosing Services, tell the people what that company is.
So that's a company. I have to admit, I couldn't think of a more original name at the time.
And you're like, you're calling me the nose, so I'm going with it.
Yeah. So I've had been operating it for about 9.5 years, almost 10. And what I do, I work as you might call it a freelance master blender. So I have certain core distilleries that I work with, right? I am their master blender. And then I also have a number of people that I consult with. Maybe they'll send me samples of faulty distillate, or something they've had laying down for a while, a bourbon that's developed
some weird flavor.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's and I also teach classes for distillers.
Because you're involved with the American Distilling Institute.
Yeah, American Distilling Institute, and I'm also at the faculty, or on. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
On the faculty at Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky.
Gotcha. But you live in Berkeley?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I live in Berkeley, California.
Gotcha. And so I am fascinated. How does an expert Indo-Tibetan monk / law trained person become the nose with a company called Nosing Services? Like, what was the transition? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because, I created a sensory kit for people to develop their palates.
Which is really cool.
Right?
I got to play with that today.
Yeah. It was funny because she smelled them. She's like, yeah, that one's good. That one's good. And then she'd pick one up and smell it and not say that one's good. I'm like, oh shit, I need to work on that one. And so if I were to walk into a craft distiller and say, hey, I don't have a website. Okay. Don't worry about that. All right. But I want to help you blend your whiskey. Right. They'd be like, yeah, get out of here. A lot of people want that. So what was the transition from when you decided to leave law to you getting into this position where you have so many customers you can't answer your phone?
Well, it was, I didn't really get that far in the legal world, actually. So I had, back in the mid 2000s, I had gone to a fundraiser, actually. And I tasted, there were a lot of wineries there and food vendors and such. Excuse me. And one of the vendors I saw was this company called Bourbon, and they were a craft distillery out of California, out of Ukiah, who made craft distilled brandy using old world French techniques, new world variety, wine varietals like Pinot Noir and such, and excuse me, that was started by a 10th generation cognac maker. And I've said this a million times. I know it sounds cliche, but that experience changed my life. So it wasn't that long after that event that I quit my job at the law firm I was working with, traveled around the world for a while, Morocco, Spain, Mexico, and such.
The typical,
as one does.
What normal people do. Yeah.
Keep on saying. And a year later, I was working there. So that's where I got my training, was essentially in the French brandy tradition and such.
Were you working in cognac, or were you working
in California?
In California. So you traveled the cognac region, but your first job with in distilling was there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Or in a distillery, not in distilling.
Or right. I later so it started off more like doing legal marketing type stuff, and it was very clear that was not my
forte.
Got laid off during the 2008 recession, and then later went back to work as an assistant distiller.
Wow.
So
with Aubert
at Germain
Bourbon. I can never say it right. I try so hard. I do. I promise.
It's okay.
Yeah. I didn't take French, so like none of it. I like the pronunciation doesn't make sense to me. So you that is just fascinating. So you're working there, and as an assistant distiller, and what was the next job that you had in the spirits industry after you left there?
It was not long after that I started consulting. And
what year did you start working there?
2007.
When did you graduate law school?
Of 2005.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were in the law field for a very short time, plus
very short,
plus travel, and then working.
And I was well into my 30s. I've been in college, grad school, law school for about 12 years. So.
Right. Professional student.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, were you drinking while you were in college? Like No, you really didn't drink that much.
Not really.
Not a teetotaler, but like you. It's not like you were a party or.
Oh
like,
no.
You weren't at the party going like, oh, try this one and try this one, right?
No. I've told this story before, but I did have my first whiskey experience when I was 7 years old at my father's wedding to my stepmother.
Right.
So it was inadvertent. I picked up a glass. I thought was my Coca-Cola, and it
Right.
was actually a Jack and Coke, and I did like it a lot. So that's that might have been an indicator, but I'm not quite sure exactly how I slid into this. One thing just kind of
Led to another.
yeah, and
So something else
that's
that's unique, which clearly
mhm,
you're like smarter than the average bear, is that you also have, for lack of a better description, a photographic aroma memory. Like you can smell something and
yeah.
then your brain remembers it forever. Is that
That's pretty close.
okay?
It's not as much as it used to be. I'm getting ready to turn 50 in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I've noticed things don't work quite the way they used to, but I can remember like dates and times when I had certain intense aromatic experiences. I remember the time in February 1977 when I had my first salsa and Mexican food, and I the or 19 September um, uh, 1992 when I had my first Ethiopian uh, meal, and I remember everything I ate, and when I tend to have this kind of aromatic memory, I can remember what the weather was like that day. I remember thoughts I was thinking, just kind of the whole picture. I could. It's like I can see it.
Hmm.
Based on that intense aroma memory. So, so it's that's why if I, there are clients like what Wyoming whiskey that I've worked with, for example, where I've literally had thousands of their barrels now, and I can remember. I mean, not I actually don't remember every single thing
Barrel.
I've ever
Right.
had, but there are like I remember the characteristics of you know
That's mind
a lot
blowing.
of those. Yeah, and I mean it's kind of freakish in a sense.
Well,
It's not always a good thing to have that ability.
well, right, but when if you're, so many of us have done barrel selections,
Mhm.
which is it's can be intimidating for whiskey nerds, but
Mhm.
it's not. At the end of the day, you're tasting whiskey and you just point at the one you like the most, right? It's that simple. Blending is tasting a whiskey and go, what's missing, and then
Right.
where can I find that, right? So
Exactly.
if you have a photographic aroma memory of all of these barrels, that would be an invaluable asset in blending, right? And so how did Hubert remain
Hubert Germain
Germain
Bourbon.
Robon?
Close enough.
Close enough.
It works.
How did he know to tap that? Or did you go in and you'd be like, yeah, I can, like when I smell things, like I remember it forever? Or how did he know that about you? Did you share that with
Well,
him? Like,
I'm sorry, I'm choking on Armagnac right now.
it's okay. Do you need more water?
No, I might actually. Well, he had actually left in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
so he was gone by the time I got there. It was actually only later that I became very fast friends with them and started studying with them.
Gotcha. Training.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So what year did you leave that company? Because you started in, what'd you say, 07
Hmm.
originally, and then there
So
was the
it
time
would have
period you
been
didn't work
about
there.
2011.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so that's when you started consulting.
Hmm.
So you were there
Actually,
as,
about 2010 was I was already consulting in 2010 on just not blending necessarily, but I was already fault things I was already pretty good at.
Gotcha.
It just came very naturally to me.
So are you going to trade shows and people are meeting you, or like, how did people even know to ask you to help them?
Quite frankly, I'm not sure.
That's the best answer you could have given.
I don't know.
Because I tried to figure this out on the internet, like before we
Yeah.
met. I'm like, how did this happen?
I just, I'm not even, I try and go back and think, how did this thing happen? And it's just, I'm not even quite sure. I just started, it just kind of had the snowball effect. And since one thing I did know, though, was during my time that I was working at Bourbon, was that I it didn't take me very long to discover that I really wanted to become a blender
Mm-hmm.
and eventually a master blender. And that was really obvious to me that that's really what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would be good at it.
Well,
And,
with your very specific skill, I mean, I suppose that could help in detecting flaws in distillate, but with your specific nose skill, it seems like blending is like you were born for it, right? I mean,
yeah, it's as much as well, I I think people that do what I do, or that are master blenders, you do have to have some ability, but then it's part training and working with things over and over and
of
over.
course,
And
but the whole concept that you can be tasting something and say it's not done. We need barrel 199 out of the warehouse, and we need X percentage of that, and then it's going to fix it, right? Like that just blows my mind. Also, you should know I'm scared to death of blending. Like, because
oh, you shouldn't be.
I don't know why I am. Like, I won't even blend whiskeys at my house. Like, I'm like, I don't want to fuck it up. I just, so I'm scared. I'm scared to death of blending for sure. So you are super busy in your consulting career. You travel. What percentage of the time do you think you travel?
Oh my gosh. Well, it depends on the time of the year. So when I work with my clients here in the United States, we start blending season when the barrels start coming out of dormancy in the winter times. So um, depends on where I am. Maybe the southernmost states.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also start with early spring, and then make my way up north.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
so the barrels are dormant during the really cold months.
Correct.
Okay, but they can't be too hot when you're blending.
Right. So maybe there are certain months, April, May, June, when it's not uncommon for me to be gone every week.
Wow.
And I'll just fly back home to California on the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Just so you all know, they've had her drinking for a long time before I got here.
Yeah, well, I've been talking for 3 days. Yeah,
she taught a class too. So
and I'm choking on Armagnac.
Yeah, and
a very good Armagnac.
And a very good Armagnac at that. So so with all that travel, how do you feel like that's affected your personal life? I mean, that's hard to maintain friendships, relationships, even family relationships. Has that negatively impacted you?
It is really it's hard to maintain friendships and outside of my business, and outside of my clients.
Sure.
Who many become
personal friends.
Exactly, family, and in some cases. Um, sometimes, well, I have to say with Southwest, I've got a companion pass, so my partner will travel with me, and unfortunately, we have to get a dog sitter.
Yeah.
for our little labradoodle, appropriately named Brandy.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Naomi will travel sometimes.
So you are openly gay woman.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's been instances where that held you back, or people showed or were discriminatory against you in your career or anything like that?
I don't think because of that. I think that there have been times as a woman
Mm-hmm.
I've found and encountered some discrimination that way, but
Which is stupid because it
that's
is a proven fact that women's palates are better than men's.
but I find you know I just I to me it's just very matter of fact.
Have
And
you ever gone in
and
and talked with somebody and you felt like you got an adverse reaction when they realized that you were gay?
um it's not happened in my career, but yes, it has happened
Okay.
in in my life and in my personal life.
Oh.
That it happened to me, yeah, when I lived in Boston when I was at Harvard.
Yeah, really?
Oh my God, yeah,
I mean, in
one
my mind, Harvard
that's
is like so progressive that everybody's
well,
just,
yeah,
but
but
this was years ago too.
yeah,
So.
it is, yeah, in the mid 1990s. So, I remember one night or having a group of 25 teenagers chasing me down the street, threatening to kill me. So,
Male teenagers?
male and female.
Really? Yeah,
It,
that's
it was terrifying.
sure.
So and then once in San Francisco, when I well actually when I was in law school, I lived in Oakland. I was taking our subway home, BART, and some the train stopped abruptly, and I had to brace myself against some fellow, and I apologized, and he looked back and made a very rude comment and chased me off the subway. So, but fortunately, in my work life, I've never had any incidents.
That's good. Well, I mean, I know
So
for one thing, whoever that guy was, I'm sorry, but you're fucking stupid. Like,
that's for
first off,
sure. That
if you don't like gay women and one touched you, don't get mad at her for it. That just doesn't make any sense. Like in your mind, you should have been excited, you stupid ass. One.
exactly.
And like she was headed in the right direction and you discouraged it in your mind. I mean, it's not the right direction. I don't want gay people to become straight, but you know what I'm saying? He probably does, and that's dumb.
Yeah.
So well, I find that interesting. And part of the reason why I find it interesting is that the whiskey industry in particular has not always been very accepting of women. So Fred Minnick's book, Whiskey Women, I mean, like
Mhm.
you hear some of these stories about women that had contributed enormously to some of these big brands and they were passed over for promotion and
Absolutely.
all of this stuff. And so do you feel like your experience is testament to the fact that some of that stuff has changed? Or do you still feel like it's an issue that needs working
It,
on?
well, I will say I think most of the time it's and just my experience. I can't speak for other women or other gay women in the industry, but most of the time my experience has been very positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think people tend to just like me for me. I try to be
Saw the laughing.
kind. And, I as genuine as I can be as a human being, but I occasionally I do find some there's always work.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I never want to make it seem like we've arrived and we can stop trying. I don't mean that,
Right.
but yeah. Yeah. So let's transition a little bit.
Sure.
So in your consulting service, I know that you consulted obviously with Joseph Magnus.
Mhm.
Would you consider Joseph Magnus your largest success story so far?
It's definitely a large success story. I don't know if it's certainly not my only one.
Sure. So what are some of the other clients that you've worked with that you're allowed to disclose
Sure.
that the viewers might have heard of?
So, may I grab a bottle
Yeah,
here?
sure. Grab whatever you want.
So one would be this is a special edition we just recently did, but Wyoming whiskey. So after master blender Steve Nally
Mm-hmm.
left. Steve had been at Maker's Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was master distiller there before Dave Pickerel. After Steve left, I started working with Wyoming Whiskey in October of 2014,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. And I'm really thrilled and proud of where we've come with that.
I'm empty. Can I have some of this?
Oh, please. That that's
Who else? I know
that's
obviously Iron Root.
Iron Root.
I mean, we're here at Iron Root because you work with them.
Could you hand me that spittoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. I'm gonna join you in the next one. Iron Root Republic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working with that, or I've been working with them before they distilled a drop.
Right.
And, they're very much family at this point. Another one I'm very proud of, which people that live in the Midwest can probably find this, is J. Henry and Sons. That's coming out well there. So we just finished up a limited edition bourbon that I'm extremely proud of. Who else? Smooth Ambler.
Oh,
yeah.
Everybody knows that. Shit, you should have led with that.
That's I probably am not
the Johns.
Yeah, exactly. The Johns. Yeah, great guys. They're in West Virginia. Probably not as involved in their day-to-day, or I'm not involved in the day-to-day blending, but I've been working with them for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really thrilled, with where things are going. And there's some great things coming online that
are out
in
yet.
The warehouses that, very like excited about. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Following that. Also, San Augustine Distillery.
Where are they out of?
San Augustine, Florida.
Okay, I think I've heard of them, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Are they I don't think they're distributed in Texas, are they?
Probably not.
Yeah. Okay.
Still Austin Distillery.
Really?
Down in Austin.
Okay.
I've been working with them before they ever distilled a drop. Gosh.
And to be honest, I tried their product for the first time here. We did a big fundraiser. We had 2 whiskey clubs come together here. We did a bottle share, and I tried their product, and I really liked it.
Thank you. That's we're using those old French techniques,
which is not always the case when I taste a new Texas company's whiskey. Sometimes like, oh shit, they need to call Nancy. Oh wow, okay.
Virginia Distillery Company near Charlottesville, Virginia. Malt whiskey. I have others. People in the U.S. I've got some international clients.
Right, because you do some rums as well, right?
Rums, yeah.
And
absolutely.
Do you have any clients in Cognac, Armagnac area?
No, I don't. I go over there to study. If not every year,
Every other year.
Yeah. But I try and get there as often as I can. But I've got a new single malt client in northern India.
Oh, okay.
About 4 hours north of Delhi.
What are they called?
I'll be they're I can't really talk too much about that just at the moment. But
well, there's an Indian company that's making a Scotch style whiskey that Christopher Hart. They sponsor his program, and he speaks very highly of it. I'm not the best person to ask about peated whiskeys,
sure,
because it's just not my jam. But he loves it, and everyone that he gives it to that drinks Scotch loves it. So I was just curious if it was that.
They do some good stuff over there, and they're really coming along. So yeah, when I'm not working in blending season here in the States, then I'm out
international.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you are really an expert at blending
Mm-hmm.
and maturation, but you do
Correct.
provide consulting services for, when you detect something that might be off for the
Mm-hmm.
distillate, and tell them how they might need to change their distillation process and all those things.
Sure.
And so I read that you are looking for taints
Mm-hmm.
and flaws.
So,
And what's the difference?
so a taint versus an off note.
Off note. That's
Off
what
note.
those are the words. Yeah.
So a taint would be some kind of atypical flavor or aroma that would arise from some kind of environmental factor. Something that say was not in the whiskey before, like um, cork taint,
Mm-hmm.
TCA, or geosmin in water, the blue-green algae
Mm-hmm.
byproduct that comes from that, gives the off a very musty, earthy beet type of note, that sort of thing. An off flavor or off aroma is some kind of atypical aroma or defect that arises naturally in the production process, but for some reason or another, it develops a high, very high um, aroma threshold in there, so in the, say, in a whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So a good example of that, which you and I were talking about isoamyl acetate earlier.
Bananas, people. It's bananas.
So, and a little bit of that
Good.
In a whiskey can, add a lot of complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're drinking a banana bomb bourbon,
So for me,
not so much. Yeah.
I joke that it's the comedy rule of threes. Right? So it's like the joke, you say it once, half the people laugh. You say it the second time, no one laughs. You say it the third time, everyone laughs.
Everyone laughs.
That's how I am with bananas. If there's isoamyl acetate a little bit, I like it.
Yeah.
If there's a little bit more, I don't like it.
Don't like it.
If there's a little bit more than that, I love it. Right? I like.
That's great.
So some of the like Jack Daniel's single barrels that are just like boom, banana nut bread in your face. I'm like, I love this so much, And what's funny is people think I don't like bananas, and I'm like, no, I love banana in my whiskey.
Me too.
It's just there's this middle ground where it's like, okay, it's just too much.
Well,
right?
yeah, if to me that would become an off flavor if all I'm getting in that whiskey is just banana all day long.
Right.
I don't get caramel, vanilla, or at least all those.
I have one that's like that.
Other notes, or minimized. It's like you're eating a.
I'm like, did you ferment like banana runts? Like, how'd you do this? By the way, this whiskey, I swear to God, if you told me I was drinking sweet tea,
it is.
I would. I love it. I'm just like, if you put this on ice and they're like, here, this is tea, I'd be drunk as shit because I think I was just drinking tea.
It is sweet tea. Yeah, this was a very limited or a very, very, very small blend.
Oh God, that's so good.
Put together back in June.
So what are the top couple, 2 or 3 taints or off notes that you find often, and what causes them?
Probably what I find a lot are some kind of fermentation faults.
Okay.
So often that comes from maybe not a big thing I've found over the years is not doing proper protocol for cleanliness and sanitization.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you clean, you're getting large debris off, dead yeast or grain, large debris off of a tank or a fermentation tank. Sanitization, on the other hand, is taking care of all the small microflora and such. in there. So I find notes like butyric acid, and oftentimes, which to me kind of has a aroma like someone has vomited
Right.
Parmesan cheese.
Can't that turn into pineapple though?
Yes, yeah, that's what is the ethyl butyrate, I
Right.
believe, yeah. Um, but yeah,
But
also
yeah,
it's
it's
acetic acid, and yeah, there are just all kinds of nasty um things
does
going
sour
on.
mash help with that?
And it should, yeah, to be able to get the pH at a place
Because
where
I'm shocked at the
you don't
number
have.
of Texas craft producers that use a sweet mash
Oh,
process,
a lot do, yeah.
and
It's
they
surprising.
all talk about their sanitation and their
Hmm.
preparation before fermentation. And I didn't realize that, you know, that sour mash process helped with some of those fermentation issues like that. When you read books, they just say it creates consistency, but
Right.
what I didn't know is that it would help fix um, flaws that were created by
Absolutely.
a lack of sanitation in the
Hmm.
fermentation process.
Hmm.
So I find that fascinating. What are the common taints that you find?
Well, that it would be a taint.
Oh, that would be a
So
taint
yeah, so an off,
because it was environmental. Gotcha.
exactly. Some kind of some kind of issue with the water, or bacterial contamination, that sort of thing would be a taint. Off notes that, as we were saying, isoamyl acetate, diacetyl, which does rise naturally in a fermentation, but too much of it. I'm sure you've had butter bombs
Mm-hmm.
before in whiskey, and that
Mm-hmm.
buttered popcorn type of note before, which a little bit of that
Right.
can add complexity, but you don't want to sit and eat a bag of popcorn with your
With your
buttered popcorn,
yeah.
yeah. So that those would be they arise naturally in fermentation, but at certain thresholds.
Gotcha.
They're just way out of proportion to everything else.
Well, let me just say you
Sure.
are phenomenal
Oh,
with your book of
thank you. Yeah,
knowledge, what you bring to
appreciate
the
that.
industry. I love all of that. Um, you are human though,
I am.
and
Last I checked.
yeah, and so I'm so curious because you
Yeah.
have such a tight schedule and you're traveling to help these different people.
Mhm.
What do you do when you have a client meeting and you can't reschedule it because it has to be done then, and you've got allergies or a cold and your palate's compromised?
That creates a conundrum. I have to say that the biggest thing I try to do is don't get sick.
Hmm.
But
And spirits help with that, in my opinion.
they do. They can also, lower your immune system too.
That's what they say, but I don't
that's
believe that part because I don't get sick,
kill those
people,
bugs.
and I drink whiskey every day.
So, when I do get sick, quite frankly, it's one thing if I, have to be on the phone with someone and talk them through a certain
Something, yeah, some problem. Yeah.
procedure, or a problem. But if I've got to do blending work, I just can't do it.
Okay.
That.
I was just curious, are
And
you able to lean heavily on their palates and say, what are you tasting? Okay, let's do this.
it
Or do you just go, got to reschedule?
depends.
Mhm.
It depends on the product. If it's something very special and high end, then I definitely want to be part of the process.
Mhm.
And so I just want to reschedule. If it's something that gets released quite frequently, I can talk.
Someone else through it.
If it's somebody I've maybe trained and worked with a lot, and I know that.
Do you have any clients that like you're just like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about? Like, obviously you can't say who, but do you have any clients where you're just like, shit, every suggestion you come up with is just terrible? Just do what I say.
Yeah, well,
Or do you just not hire those people? I don't know.
I don't anymore.
Okay.
That's I have had that issue in the past.
Okay.
And knock on wood, fortunately, I'm not at that point in my career where I
Have to deal with that.
have to do that anymore.
That is awesome. So are you accepting new clients? And if people want to get in contact with you, who should get in contact with you and how?
Well, that's a good question. I have to say I don't take on new clients that much anymore.
Okay.
It's usually for at this point in my career, I have my clients that I work with on a yearly or
Right. You got a schedule,
all year
when you're going to do blending.
Exactly. So it's usually at this point some kind of project that I personally find interesting, or that like the new malt client in India, for example.
Right.
Working with that kind of maturation environment just sounds so fascinating, and I've had to tasted what they've laid down, blah blah blah, and I'm personally intrigued by it. Or I've got a new client from Vietnam that's doing some corn whiskey, and they're working with a koji mold too. As you would in say Soshu production and such. So the things where I feel like I can learn something, and that it's going to be an adventure, if that makes sense, and that's personally interesting. Then
so you're not super big on social media, right? Do you want followers there?
I've got followers, but I don't give them anything to follow.
Right.
I'm so old timer in some ways, that.
That's okay. You're killing it.
Surprised, I don't still have a typewriter.
That is awesome.
But I love what I do, and the clients I've been working with for a long time, and
so I'm going to make a suggestion. I think that you should build your following, and then you should post updates for what your clients are releasing, and people will come follow you because of they want access to that information, and then your clients will be happier because you're promoting things.
Well, that I do try and promote my clients. I hate to admit this. I'm just on the road so much that when you've been nosing say 150 to 200 or more barrels a day, the last thing you want to do at the end of the day
is post some pictures on Instagram.
Is do social media, which is bad of me, I know, but it's
so Nancy needs an assistant. is what I'm picking up.
Exactly.
Someone who returns her voicemails, checks her email, and makes social media posts for her. That's what she needs. So.
If you want to contact me for an interview, just let me know.
Yeah, you gotta know people who know people. So anyway, well, if you want more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can get that at bourbonrealtalk.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram /Bourbon Real Talk. And if you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not somebody loved you, just know that I love you. I'll see you next time.